Of the African Union, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, says there's an urgent need for African nations to benefit from the commercial exploitation of their minerals. She was addressing delegates during the last day of the Mining Lekgotla in Johannesburg today.
Africa has vast mineral resources, but too often mining companies take advantage of weak governments to pillage the mineral wealth of a country, leaving the country and people with little or nothing. Keynote speaker on the final day of the Mining Lekgotla, AU Chair Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, says the African Union is working hard to change this.
This will also depend on the willingness of member states to actually implement the mining vision, because the mining vision wants to integrate the extractive industry into the rest of the economy.
Mineral Resources Minister Nkosazana has pledged to crack the whip to ensure faster compliance with the transformation targets set out in the mining charter. He wants to eradicate squatter camps that have mushroomed in many mining areas.
Part of the problem with the squatting camps has come from the agreement which was reached some years ago with the so-called living out allowance. That created conditions for massive squattering outside the formal structures. And that's why we've been looking at ways and means of, once we deliver the houses, then we withdraw some of the so-called living allowance so that we put people in proper accommodations.
A government report on the extent to which the mining industry has met or failed to meet the targets of the mining charter will be released early next year. Mbongini Muchwa, SABC News, Johannesburg.
With the Mining Lekgotla now over, we ask, was it all worth the talk? And can we expect action so that at the next Lekgotla, the conversations about transformation and development are different? Well, I'm joined in studio by Mike Decker. He's president of the Chamber of Mines. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you.
Now, there's been a lot of talk that's been going on. By next year, can we expect that the mining houses will be compliant with the mining charter, for example, which they're supposed to be compliant with this year?
Well, as we know that the MPRDA was promulgated in 2004, in other words, it came into effect in 2004, and 2014 is the 10th year, and the audit is going on at the moment. DMR is auditing the companies. Quite a number of areas have been covered. Good progress has been made in quite a number of areas. But I guess we'll need to wait for that audit to come through, and a lot of companies are still continuing with the work in the different streams of the mining charter.
Now, one of the issues that has struck me out of the Mining Lekgotla and even in the alternative mining endeavour that's been going on is the fact that mine workers still battle with the issue of accommodation. How urgent is that issue for you? We've heard the Minister for Mines, Mr. Ramatlodi, talk about the urgency of moving with that. How urgent do you think that is so that you don't have future problems?
It's always been, it's urgent in that historically, as we know that the mining industry has had a lot of migrant labor challenges. Number two, the hostile situation where the migrant laborers from Lesotho, from Eastern Cape and other neighboring countries have come to the mining industry and worked there as migrant laborers. The challenge you faced is the conversion of those hostile or demolishing them. Some of them have been converted into single occupancy occupation, and we've built houses for employees. And in other instances, employees have been given living out allowances. Now you find that with the employees who've been given living out allowances, leaving the hostels, they go and stay in either in houses, they buy houses. Some of the employees stay in informal settlements. So it's urgent that we try and get rid of what we call informal settlements and ensure that we have proper housing. And mining houses have done their best. In the Rustenburg area, there are initiatives by Implats, Lonmin and Anglo. If you go to the Sekhukhune district in the eastern bushveld, you're seeing that happening. In the Free State, there are attempts to improve the living conditions of employees. So it is urgent.
Now, one of the things that we noticed over the past couple of days is the fact that the communities were campaigning outside of the Mining Lekgotla. When is the Chamber of Mines and other parties, when are they going to join forces to actually include communities in the conversations that they have at conferences like the Mining Lekgotla so that all the stakeholders are involved to try and reach solutions?
Well, number one, as we know that the communities within which the mines operate are critical to the mining industry because A, you cannot grow a mine next to a community that's not thriving. You need to ensure that you balance and ensure that you look after that community. Number two, it is important that communities are a stakeholder. They are closer to the mine where you operate. The resources within which you are exploiting, it's important that they would like to benefit in a form of jobs, in a form of accommodation, in a form of amenities. And what is important for us is to involve them. We are involving them. And there is a robust debate that's taking place either at regulatory level, at mining house level. Even today and yesterday at the Mining Lekgotla, we had several questions raised. And I'm saying there are quite a number of areas to be covered. There's a huge gap.
Now, lastly, Mike, I just want to put to you, it's the second anniversary of the tragedy of Marikana. What do you think all stakeholders can learn? What lessons can be drawn from what happened 2 years ago?
I think the most important thing we've learned is, A, we've committed ourselves to ensuring that we deal with our industrial relations environment in South Africa, especially in the mining industry. Number one, the framework agreement signed as was led by a former Deputy President, Kgalema Motlanthe, now led by President Zuma. We need to ensure that what was agreed with those issues like living conditions, issues like employee indebtedness, issues like the wage discussions that are taking place and the migrant labor system. It is important that we aggressively address those issues to ensure that the dialogue that takes place yields results. Otherwise, we will find ourselves going back to situations where confrontations take place. I think it's important that dialogue is strengthened.
A little bit of a curveball, but what do you do when you get a union like AMCU, which has refused to sign that framework? I mean, it's a significant part of the discussion, isn't it?
You look back, Nompu, and you say, had we waited and said, because AMCU hasn't signed, therefore let's not implement, we would have stifled progress. I think it's important that we continue to engage with AMCU. By the way, we were expecting AMCU to participate in the Lekgotla. They didn't participate, but they were invited. Fact is, we would like them to be inside, as part of us, part of the industry. They represent a huge number of employees. And if they are not part of that, it becomes a challenge.
Indeed it does. Well, thank you for your time, Mike.
Thank you.
That was Mike Decker. He's president of the Chamber of Mines.